What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about BCHG and LTCN Grayscale Trust tonight with a specific request from Mr. Martin Money himself. Shout out to Captain Jack. I love that name, man. That's a perfect name. But we're talking about the time frames, the timing of these grayscale trusts and when they could potentially find their highs. Not just when, we're going to go over where, also price predictions. Martin specifically wanted me to talk about the earliest time frame that I could see this happening. So we're going to go through ranges. It's not going to be one pinpointed moment in time. It's going to be a range, both in time and in price. I'm going to give you a range. That way, you know, if you'd like to start dollar cost averaging out of the markets, you might have an idea, a nice window of when that could be. I also will go over the expected area that I have in mind personally, but I will be a little bit more generous too and go for what I could reasonably see being the longest amount of time that we could have for these trusts to run up. I'm not going to try to be too crazy. I'm not going to try to be too conservative, but reasonable on both sides. And I definitely will give a range. So anyways, if that sounds good to you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you like content like this, if you want to see more. Let's get started. I'll take my face off the big screen here. We'll put it on the little screen. And yeah, we're going to start off actually talking about Bitcoin, because I think it's very, very important to acknowledge the cycles, the cyclical phases, and the amount of time that it takes for Bitcoin to move through its bull cycles in order to identify when the underlying asset will come to the end of its cycle, in order to identify when the appropriate amount of time might be for the Grayscale Trust itself to find a high. So it all starts here, okay? The first cycle, the very first cycle, this is how a lot of people define the first cycle, is right here. You know, there's an argument to be made that this could be all one cycle. There is an argument to be made because we hadn't had our first halving. Generally, cycles end after the halving. And we also do get bear cycles before the halving too. But anyways, 18 bars, I feel comfortable saying that was our first cycle, you know, kind of a just storm to the upside, and then down from a low point to a high point here, 24 bars, 18, 24. This was our first low, the end of the bear cycle itself, but we didn't begin the bull cycle until this month here. At least that's when things really stopped being boring and started getting a little bit more exciting. So 28 months there, low here to the high there, that's 35 months. Some people, you know, I think if we're going to use that logic for this is the end of the bear cycle, crab market, then bull cycle. I think end of the bull cycle, crab market, then bear cycle. That makes sense to me. And 28, 28, 24, it kind of falls right in that range that we've seen, other than the first very sporadic market that just went bananas when Bitcoin first started. So that's the kind of range that we have already, okay? Already we've passed 18 bars, so I don't think that's going to happen. 24 bars would be our next possibility, and that would put us at the end of this year in November. I personally don't see that happening either. I don't think that's the thing. So I'm going to throw both of these out. What I would really expect is if it's not quite 28 months, it might be, let's say, like a couple months earlier, 26 months. If not, I would think more likely we would have a later time frame than that, right? If not 28, I wouldn't think it would be earlier. I think it would actually be longer. A lot of people are calling for it to be earlier. I don't know why, but that just seems to be the narrative, and it's like everybody hears everybody else saying that, and they're like, this makes sense, let's go with that. But I don't, to me, what would make the most sense is something in between 24 to 28 bars, and that wouldn't be a shorter bull market on average. That'd be like an average bull market, you know, somewhere in there. So 26 bars, that put us in as early as January from the low to the end of the bull market, right? And then 28 bars would be March of 2025. If we went further than that, that would be 30 bars there. And I'm going to calm the nerves right now, because I know for some people, I actually forgot about this before I started saying it. For some people that might seem early, but I'm going to calm the nerves. I do think that it's going to go later. My prediction is that the bull market will end in October, and I'll go over why I think that. But I think from here to 28 bars, I mean, maybe we don't even need to put that in there, right? We can just kind of throw it all like this, and I will move this bar. I think it will be October, and I'll go over why in a second. But from this low to this high, this was the end of the bull market, to be completely fair. But I think that we were robbed. I do believe that we were robbed here, and that this should have continued going higher. The reason it didn't is because on our DXY, on the dollar index, the basically measures the strength of the dollar versus 10 very prominent currencies in the world. I forget what, it might be less than 10. Let's see. What currencies is the DXY based off of? Euro, Japanese yen, British pound, Canadian dollar, Swedish krona, and Swiss franc. So 6, sorry, not 10, 6. Very prominent currencies, especially with the euro and the British pound. I'm surprised that the Chinese yuan isn't in there, but I don't know. Whenever this gains strength, the yuan normally goes down too, so that, just to be completely fair. The reason why, going back to why I think our last cycle was only 28 months from the low to the end of the bull cycle there. It was only 28 months. And I think it actually should have been more like 35 months, is because this was the first period right here in a bull cycle, toward the end of the bull cycle. It was the first period in a bull cycle that we had the DXY going through an expansion phase. And I'm going to identify those now, right? So like you can see here, expansion phase, consolidation phase, expansion phase, consolidation phase, expansion phase, right? And if you notice, this expansion phase began, it really started to begin right here in June of 2021. June of 2021. Well, that was literally right here, like right in our dead zone of the bull market, when we should be having our most phenomenal blow off top moment, as we have throughout history, is at the very end of the cycle. We had our very first ever double top with Bitcoin that we've ever seen. We didn't have a phenomenal blow off top. This was the first time ever that Bitcoin itself also did not achieve a 2272 extension from its previous cycle high to cycle low. From a cycle high to cycle low here, 2272 extension hit. From a cycle high to a cycle low here, and we're going to get to the Grayscale stuff soon, I promise. 2272 hit. This cycle, again, the weakest cycle that we've had so far, the only one with a double top, the only one where the DXY was expanding while we were in our finale phase, we got held down by the 1618, of which we're holding support on right now. But I really do think that we should have gone higher. I think the timing makes sense, right? The bear market didn't start until there, but the bear market normally starts literally at the end of the bull market. We don't get these crab markets. And we did last cycle. I'm not saying we can't this cycle. I think it's important to mention and note, but I don't know if it's something to depend on. In fact, I've actually caught a lot of YouTubers, people who I watch, people who I've just started watching, just like random people as well. They compare this cycle to the last cycle a lot, and I think they're going to be sourly mistaken in doing that, because last cycle did not have a phenomenal finish. Where that's just not the crypto way. We literally had the dollar expanding, and some of you might be wondering on this note, will it expand this cycle? And this is where the nerves hopefully will get calmed a little bit. Okay, after its expansion here, it didn't move up again for about 65 months. Okay, we didn't have another expansion phase for 65 months. We went up, we went down, we went all around, but 65 months till we noticeably, I think it's very obvious, right, that this was our expansion, our next expansion. Okay, expanded here, not the high, but the move itself. Okay, consolidated. This is all in the same consolidation range. We began this next expansion phase 75 months later. So 65 months, 75 months. As of now, from the high to when we've been consolidating, we are at about 22 months. Okay, 22 months. I would assume, and this is probably based also on like elections and stuff like that, and maybe, I don't think it has anything to do with the Bitcoin cycle itself, but I think the Bitcoin cycle has something to do with the Bitcoin cycle in the sense that when it consolidates, it's a good time for Bitcoin to run. Whenever it's running, it's a good time for Bitcoin to cool down. And actually, most of these, all of the expansion phases, except for this one, began around in the bear markets, whether in the beginning, whether in the end or the middle. This one, it did kick off the bear market, right? September 2022, we kicked off our bear market by then. This did help us go down probably. But I'm digressing from the point. The point being that, it's probably not going to be until 2027 at the earliest, maybe 2028, that this next expansion phase will occur. Okay, that's my assumption, right? Probably to end the next bull market, because it's it's supposed to be 2025. Maybe. I don't know. That could be a problem for the next bull market, to be completely fair. But hey, we're not going to worry about that now. We can worry about that later. Anyways, no, I don't think that it's going to affect this cycle. So with that in mind, let's go back to BTC here, right here. And I do want to throw this idea of we got robbed. Maybe we should have moved up for 35 months. After all, 18, 24, 28, 35, we are seeing the cycles increase in length from low to high. And that much is true. Whether you want to classify that as a crab market or not, the very simple technical truth is from a low point to a high point, it did increase in time. So I'm going to put this next bar at 35 bars, actually. I'm going to move it all the way out here. So this is our time window. At the earliest, we could top off, Bitcoin could top off, and the rest of crypto could top off in January of 2025. That doesn't sound likely to me, but let's be fair. That could happen, right? If we go 28 months, we did have a 28-month bull cycle last time, right? This, again, we had our high afterwards, but we didn't have the bull cycle last that long. But again, I think that's we lost that on a technicality with the DXY there. But let's be fair. This is the data presented in front of us. 28 months. This line comes from taking 2 months away, just in case it does. You know, this bull market happens to be 26 months instead of 28 months. Let's be realistically pessimistic, right? I think that's fair, throwing 26 months in there. I don't personally expect that, right? But 35 months would put us all the way in October of 2025. And actually, I think if we do the same thing, if we add a couple months to that, perhaps it could be the very end of 2025, December, maybe even January of 2026, that we see this market open. So that time range is large. It's actually literally the whole year of 2025, if we're being completely fair. And we're going to fine tune it a little bit. All right, I will get a little bit more specific. Something else to take into consideration, you know, our very first cycle ended in June, okay, which is the middle of the year, the very middle of the year. The next cycle ended in November, the very end of the year. The next cycle ended in December, yet again the end of the year. And our last cycle ended in April, which is pretty close to the middle of the year. So we've never actually had a cycle end in the beginning. And April is more in the beginning than it is the end, right? But that's still like, that's pretty much, that's right in the middle of the year, I would say. And we didn't have our end until November. Again, our actual peak wasn't until November. So very realistically, very legitimately, the cycle highs for Bitcoin, every cycle except for the first one, have come in at the end of the year, right? And the first one happened halfway through. So already, I don't think January, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to leave that there, but I don't think that's going to happen. And if that did happen, that would mean that we have about 5 months left, right? July, August, September, October, November, December. We have 5 months left, I guess in January, 6 months left of the bull cycle. And that's still a lot of time to do damage, right? Just to put that in perspective, this right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months right there. That's the amount of time we had. If we were in 6 months to move from our current price and move at the same pace at the end of the bull cycle like we did last time, that would take Bitcoin all the way up to 352,000, okay? This was the weakest cycle we had. That would take us all the way up to 352,000 by January, right? If we started moving like that now. And if we were at the end of the bull market, I would think we would see what we see every end of the bull market, which is a phenomenal finish, okay? So even if it is January, which I wouldn't expect, that'd be pessimistic time-wise, right? That I would like to see the market last longer for various reasons. But even if it did, hey, based off our weakest cycle so far, where the DXY was literally expanding as we were moving up, if we saw the exact same movement, 362,000. If we saw half of that movement, let's just put a line right there, because I'm not good at, you know, that's the halfway point. That'd be 151,000. We'd be at 151,000 by the end of this year. Phenomenal growth, okay? But in case that I'm going over that more so, not because I think that's going to happen, but if we're really going to consider that, we can compare it to our weakest cycle and see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's not all dark and despair. This doesn't mean we're not going to break 100K by the end of the cycle or anything like that. But let's see. Another thing to go off of, I know, guys, we're going off of all these things, but this is the last part. This is the last part, is that our halving periods, first halving was November 28th, right, of 2012. From the halving to the cycle high lasted about a year, okay? And to be fair, it was the very end of November, so maybe we could measure from December, actually. All right, we had all of December. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 months is fair, because we had all of December. Our next halving was in July of 2016. And then we topped out 17 months afterwards. So 12 months, 17 months. Our next high was May 11th of 2020. And we had our high 18 months. 12 months, 18 months, somewhere in that time. Our halving this time around was in April. right? At a minimum, 12 months from then would then put us in April again, right? April, hey, we topped off last cycle in April, not the very beginning of the year, but not the middle. That's kind of early, and that is the earliest expectation based off of this metric as well. So we can put a line there, all right? In this kind of circumstances, after the halving, this is the earliest, would be April of 2025, which that I would feel as a more appropriate earliest. I think January is a bit crazy. I accept it as a possibility, but I do think it's a bit crazy. 17 months being the next one would put us in September. 18 months, surprise, surprise, puts us right in October. And let's do the same thing we did last time. Maybe it's 2 months. So again, lining up with that middle of the year to end of the year kind of time frame, right? And I really do think if this is the earliest and this is the latest, I think saying the middle of 2025 to the end of 2025 is the most appropriate kind of assumption. But let's say it could be as early as Q1 or Q2. That's what Martin wanted me to do. He wanted me to talk about the earliest time frames because I think it is. I think it's important. Obviously, I think you think it's important too. To identify that, right? I think it's equally important to identify how long it could go. It's great getting out. It's great profiting. But it sucks when you take profits and the market continues to run without you. If you're happy with the money you made, don't look back. It's all good, whatever. But it does suck if you sell out too early. I've done that plenty of times. It sucks when you sell too late too, right? It definitely does. But yeah, it can. It's not fun either way. So timing is very hard. But again, leading to the idea, somewhere in the potentially like around the middle to the end of next year would be an appropriate amount of time for this cycle to go based on that alone, okay? I'm going to stop there, and now we're going to compare the actual underlying assets, okay, just so that we have that in mind. Bitcoin Cash itself did top off earlier last cycle. It did. It topped off in April. But to be completely fair, that was also when Bitcoin's bull market ended too. Bitcoin Cash being an altcoin might be more susceptible. Oh, I'm sorry. That's I'm doing that. It did not. Sorry. It ended in May. I was like, that didn't sound. I thought it was May. Around the same time, right? Around the same time. But it ended in May. So that wasn't at the actual high where Bitcoin had it, but that was more or less the end of the bull cycle. Across crypto, right? Because Bitcoin definitely didn't have its bull cycle. And the reason why I think is not because this coin topped off and all coins top off. I was watching one guy. I'm not going to throw shade at anybody because I think everybody has their own opinions. My opinions can definitely be wrong. I'm going to turn that off because I don't like that. But I had one guy comparing this last cycle saying altcoins topped off here, right? There were some coins that topped off here, but most coins topped off on that first peak. I don't think we're going to get a double top this cycle. I don't. And the reason why is we don't have the DXY in the way. And I think the reason why most of these altcoins topped off is because, yes, that was the end of the bull cycle. Let's be fair. It wasn't where we topped, but it was the end of the bull cycle. Absolutely it was. But the end of the bull cycle happened earlier than I think it should have because of the DXY. And not just the DXY. There were all kinds of economic catastrophes going on in the world, okay? Joe Biden made a shit show of our economy, and you can take that for what you want, whether you believe that or not. Maybe it wasn't Biden. We had the Ukraine-Russia conflict. We had very high rates of inflation. We were just getting over COVID and all that stuff, right? Like, people don't want to classify it as this. Like very wealthy people in the world don't want to say that we had a recession. But you guys, I think anybody who's in the working class or who's not like a multimillionaire, and no hate to the people who are, like we all got millionaire friends, right? At least one of them, right? Shout out to Ethan Gallstead on that note. But I think a lot of us Americans can all agree that from 2021 to 2023, essentially, I believe we were in a recession. It felt like it to me. It felt like it to my friends. They changed the definition. When I say they, I mean the Biden administration changed what the definition of a recession was in that time frame. Absolutely, I think that we had a recession. So topping off for crypto in the middle of or in the very beginning of a recessionary period, I don't think. And whether you want to classify it as that as or not, we did have high rates of inflation. Interest rates were going up. World conflicts going on with Russia and Ukraine. People were worried about nuclear war happening. I was never worried about that. I don't think that's going to happen personally. There would literally have to be madmen in charge. And that was the thing too. Back then, CNN, CSN, MSNBC, the big major media sources were trying to make it sound like Vladimir Putin was a madman on a mission for world domination. And they lied to us, right? That's another thing, guys. I'm off on a tangent here, but we don't always know what the truth is. They're not the best at hiding it over time. When I say they, I mean the ominous they, the big they. They're not the best at hiding it over time, but what they are very good at is telling you what the lie is. So whatever the main source of information seems to be, whatever the main narrative is, you might not know what the truth is, but you can at least know what the lie was. And the lie back in this time was that Vladimir Putin was a madman. He's just like a madman with a hand on a nuclear button. He's a madman. That's not the truth. He might, if he had the ability to, and I don't condone, or I don't think he's a good guy. I don't think that anything that happened with Ukraine, I'm not defending him at all. I'm just saying I'm certainly not defending our media or pretending like they're trying to help us or tell us the truth. I just don't think he's a madman. I think he's a calculated man. I think we poked the bear offering Ukraine and trying to get Ukraine to sign up with NATO, and not saying that they shouldn't be allowed, but again, there's a bunch of reasons why Russia would obviously not want their neighboring country to have that kind of established relationship with us as far as NATO goes, to be an ally with us in that sense, right? To where we can move our own weapons literally in their country, of which they had suspicions, right? We never heard that back in this time. As time's gone on, again, the lie might not be obvious in the moment, but as time goes on, we hear about it. Their reason for attacking Kiev, at least what they were telling people in Russia, for those of you that don't know, is that they thought that we had bioweapons or even weapons of mass destruction planted in Kiev, working in a science lab there, and that was their whole goal, was just that's what they say. Maybe that's a lie too on their end, but that's on our end, we're having a lie. On their end, they're having a lie. Enough about geopolitical stuff. This is not that kind of channel, but I'm more trying to defend the point. Again, I'm not defending Russia. I'm not defending what our country did or what their country did. I'm just defending the state of the market. There was this whole confusion of, are we going to go through World War III, right? And I didn't think we were. I really didn't think we were. I thought our news was hyping it up, but that ended the bull cycle. And man, enough of that. That's why Bitcoin Cash topped off here. But what a lot of people are doing right now, again, they're saying that altcoins will top off before Bitcoin. What about the last cycle? What about the last cycle when Bitcoin Cash literally topped off in the exact same month as Bitcoin, when most cryptos, most of them, they didn't top off earlier. You go to the 2017 cycle for Bitcoin, most of them topped off. And at this point, a lot of altcoins that cycle actually topped off after Bitcoin topped. Because the idea was that Bitcoin sold and then the altcoins rallied at the end. The 2017 altcoin market was crazy. If you weren't there, you wouldn't know, but literally, you can go back and look at any coin that existed back here, guys. They all topped off around this time. They didn't top off months before. That's not what happened. And if we didn't have altcoins really back here, I mean, we did have some, but we didn't have a lot. They didn't, I actually wonder, on that note, what about Litecoin? We're going to go over Litecoin too, but I'm kind of curious because I know it existed back then. That was in November of 2013. It literally topped off when? November of 2013. It didn't top off before. Last cycle it did, but again, that's because that was the actual end of the bull cycle. It's not where it should have been. We got robbed. I have my own reasons for thinking that beyond everything that I've said, but I feel like that's enough proof in the pudding there. But let's get to the main juice of this all, which is, BCH, the underlying asset, and BCHG. Okay, getting the time frames in there. I feel like I've gone over why I personally don't believe, why I do believe that we're going to top off in the middle to the end of next year in 2025, but why I don't think that means that altcoins will top off earlier than that. I think altcoins will top off very symmetrically with Bitcoin this cycle. It's not going to be like last cycle at all. And the main reason for that, better economic times, inflation rates, inflation, the rate of inflation is down. Interest rates are going down, and we're probably going to have a president in charge of the United States for the first time that is publicly advocated for crypto, and his vice president as well. This is going to be the most bullish presidency for crypto if he doesn't get assassinated before then, right? And I think it's a perfect storm for actually seeing a stronger cycle than last cycle. That to me makes sense. So I very much do think that basing things off of Bitcoin's timeline will align with Bitcoin Cash and LTC. It's not going to be earlier. I've hit that over the head so many times. Let's get into this. Hold on. I got a bunch. Let's see. Oh, what? I'm so confused. Okay. All right. So BCH, by that metric of time itself, could potentially top off in January, which again I don't see happening. January, or potentially top off. Oh my goodness, I don't even need this this tool right here. I don't even need this. I really hope I didn't lose anybody with my rant there, but I know some of you love it. I'm sure not everybody does, but maybe as late as December of 2025, right? Again, I put that random tool on there. 17 months. We got 6 to 17 months of bull cycle, and again, this is our actual technical range of when Bitcoin Cash itself could top off. But I think I do think this is a bit pessimistic, and I think very realistically, I think I think this is a more appropriate window. And even then, I still think that's a bit early. But if I was to bet, I would bet we're not going to top off in January. I know I said I was going to keep it there, but I'm going to change my mind. I don't even think that's worth mentioning. It's too big of a window. This is a much more concise window, in my opinion, for what it's worth. So, and that's what this whole video is my opinion. By the way, hit that like button, you guys. Like the video. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. It helps the channel grow, and it puts a smile on my face. I appreciate you guys. I'm putting in the work here. I don't want to be one of those guys who's begging you to hit the like button, but if I say it in the middle of the video, I feel like it helps do that, you know, and I do want to see the channel grow, you know, I do, and I am putting the work in, but if you don't like the video or you don't want to hit it, you just want to chill, whatever, I'm grateful for you being here. Viewing the video also helps the channel grow as well, so thank you for being here. But if you want to, it's very much appreciated. I'm not going to be like Ben Armstrong. Shout out to Ben Armstrong. I doubt he'd ever see this, but he like begs for it, and I just think it's to me that's just not it's not my style. I'm not going to whine over it, but I feel like I'm whining over it by talking about it too much. So let's move on. April to December could be when Bitcoin Cash tops off. From an all-time high to an all-time low Fibonacci perspective, and I love and get annoyed by the people who say, is this based in log scale? You shouldn't have it in log scale. You'll get different numbers. And I don't get like why, okay? Because obviously, yes, out of log scale, you get different numbers. But the thing is, out of log scale, you can expect deeper extensions. Look it up on any chart. Put it in log or put it out of log. When it's out of log, you get deeper extensions. Those become your more expected areas. When it's in log, this is your more, so if I take it out of log, these numbers might be lower, yes, but this isn't fair. You would actually, and you could watch my my Litecoin video where it says log versus regular, right? If you want to go over exactly what I'm talking about. I think that's a good video in illustrating that. Right here, let's see, Litecoin log versus regular. I think that's a perfect video to illustrate exactly what I'm talking about, which is that yes, taking it out of log gives you lower numbers, but that's not fair. If you're going to do that, be fair. When you take anything out of log, you're going to hit deeper extensions. You're not going to hit these expected extensions. These are expected extensions only in the log scale, and in these expected extensions, enough of that. We have a 13 to 23K price area at a minimum 13K, and where I think where we're going to go is 23K. The expected area technically is including the 1618, but I'm not insane, right? I think 53K sounds crazy. I would not bet against it. I think it's possible. I think that kind of movement could happen. I mean, if it were to happen for BCH, it would look something, I mean, it would be pretty crazy. It would be pretty crazy in a very short amount of time. You know, I mean, what would that be, actually? Let's put a box on here, date and price range. From the current price to that, right, and I'm expecting October, truthfully, not December. I'm expecting October. That would be a 13,000, let's just call it a 13,800% gain over the course of like a year and a half, well, not a year and a half, a year and 100 days, 457 days. $13,800 divided by 457. 13,800 divided by 457. We would have to increase essentially 30% a day on average, right? That's what that would be. Or if we divided that, or we'd have to multiply it by 7. What would it be? Let's do 457 divided by 7. Hold on. Divided by 7. And then this would be weeks. So 65, let's just say 65 weeks. 13,800 divided by 65. 65 weeks left. That'd be 212% on average a week that we would have to gain. And then if we divided that by months, right, 65 weeks, 52 would be a year. 65, I don't know, what's 65 divided by 52? It'd be a year 0.25, right? A year 0.25. So 13,800 divided by a year 0.25 would be an average of 11,000% a month that we would have to grow. Oh wait, no, that's not right. I did that wrong. Maybe it'd be like 1,100%. Maybe I did that wrong. I don't know. I did something wrong there. I'm not going to go over the math. I'm just saying, to me, it sounds insane. Without the monthly, it seems a bit crazy. Even this is crazy enough, but I definitely think that's going to happen. I think the main reason for that 23K price, and if my math was wrong there, I'm sorry. I'm trying to go 1,000 miles an hour right now because this video is already going on longer than I wanted it to. I can tell it is. That Bitcoin part really took a lot of time. What was I going to say? Oh, okay, this right. Hold on. I'm going to delete the fibs. Okay. High point to this high point. We literally just interacted with that there. Literally tipped at this line. It couldn't be more concise, more perfect. Like literally beautiful tip right off that line, right? Bitcoin Cash hasn't been moving down its whole life. It hasn't been moving up its whole life. It's in a consolidation phase its whole life. And if this were to be some kind of descending triangle, which it kind of looks like it is, the proper way to measure it would be from a top to a bottom, but this wouldn't be the bottom of the pattern. It is the low, but I would think more so that this would be the bottom of the pattern right here. If we were to break out to the upside, because descending triangles can break to the upside, there's like a 40% chance that they do actually. And let's say we break out of it sometime this year, right? By the end of this year, actually, and I think that we will actually be above it by the end of this year. So let's put this more like within the next month, yeah, something like that. So let's say we break out of it like right there. That would call for a move literally all the way up to about $30,000. And people are saying, and this is based off of just pattern measured movements, okay? How do we know that? You take the top to the base of the pattern, which I think I was being fair and not going for the low, but where the flat part would be on this monthly low closing basis. And then I put it where I think we're going to break this. It could be, maybe it's not August, maybe it's September, whatever. But if it's September, it just goes a little bit lower. Let's put it in September. Come on. Like right there. I feel like that's pretty appropriate. I feel like I'm even through the line a little bit. That would still be at about $28,000, right? The measure move of this pattern, which does not have to be met, is not a requirement. You can fall short of a measure move. You can exceed a measure move. Falling short would be 23K, which is my personal expected target, or 13K. That can happen as well. Exceeding it could be that 53K target or 55K target. You know, that could happen as well. It's not restricted by this, but the measure move itself even agrees with these insane movements. And generally speaking, the rule of thumb, for those of you who don't know, when you break out of a pattern such as this, the amount of time that it takes for you to complete the measure move is about half the time that you spent in the pattern. So if I'm expecting that you will be not all the way up here in September, but above this white line in September, probably earlier than that, but let's just say September, that would give us 81 months. That would mean that we have 40 and a half months. And that to me doesn't make any sense. I don't think we're going to be moving that long, but let's just say 41 months. I mean, that would, by that time, that would put us all the way out in 2028. I mean, maybe, in which case that would call for those price targets to happen in the next cycle. Maybe that's what happens. Maybe we only go up to 13K or 23K. And then inevitably we work up to 29K over the next cycle. But I don't know. That should be like, that should be in like the beginning of the next bull cycle, actually, right? 2028. I think that should be. I don't know. I'm not going to think about that now. And again, that's just a rule of thumb. That doesn't mean that that's how it has to happen. The main point of me addressing that is, again, just like the measure move, it doesn't have to meet that standard. It's just an idea. Just like this measure move of time, it doesn't have to meet that standard. It can happen faster. It can take longer. But generally, it takes less time to move up than it does to consolidate is the main point of that, okay? In Bitcoin Cash, I was actually talking to one of my buddies, shout out to Smooth Operator, who, you know, rightfully being at $380, he is questioning that 20K price target, and I understand that completely. I definitely do. But in that sense of questioning 20K, Bitcoin Cash, I compared it to this move over here. Bitcoin Cash, when it moves up, it likes to move up fast. It likes to move up very fast. It took 6 months here, okay, to move up from, technically, from the lowest point in that period to the highest point. It took, and if we were to put that at the current price right now, okay, so 6 months, well, actually, let's go from the lowest point, right? Lowest point to the highest point. That would put us at about $2,000. It put us a little bit over $2,000, okay? If we were to see this exact same move that we saw last cycle, which again was a very weak cycle, if we were to see this, and I think that we could see a move like this soon, because when we break out of this, when you break out, you tend to get very powerful moves, let alone for the end of the cycle, right? And I'll get to that in a second, but 6 months, we really could be, and that would put us in the beginning of 2025. That would put us around $2,000, maybe. Maybe it's stronger than that. Maybe it's not as strong as this, but I'm just comparing it to what we saw last cycle, okay? Which shouldn't have actually even been the end of the bull cycle, but again, I think we got robbed. I think that this might even be a pessimistic assumption for where we might be in February, but we're going to go off of this, right? I measured that from where we are right now, and from our low point. I'll even move it lower. That would put us at just above $2,000. $2,000 to $23,000 is just over a 10x, right? And that's a lot. That's a lot to ask for, I think, in this amount of time, right? Like from February to potentially October, that's what, like 8 months? It's a lot to ask for. But here we are at this low point here, the very end of Bitcoin Cash's first bull rally, the very end, key point. Low point here to the high point, it took 2 months, maybe 3 months, however you want to put it, to move up 14.5x. 3 months at the very end of the cycle to move up 14.5x. If we could be up here at about 2,000 or higher by the end of Q1, 3 months time in the end of the bull cycle, maybe we consolidate after that, right? Maybe we consolidate after Q1 or whatever, and then we have 3 months left in the year, starting in the middle of, or 3 months left in the cycle, and starting somewhere in the middle of the year or toward like July or August of next year. That could be when we have this phenomenal finish where we could literally move up just 10x or even like 12x, which would be a smaller move than this. And that would take us all the way up. That would actually take us all the way up to that exact area, that 20K area that I've been talking about. And I'm not saying that that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm not taking past results and saying it's going to be the exact same. I'm just saying, as crazy as 23K sounds, we've done this before. We've done this exact thing before, right? May 2021 was when the cycle ended. It should have been in technically November was 2021, right? That's when our high was for Bitcoin. I think we robbed of that. I do think that the entire crypto market should have moved until November of 2021, because it's actually more common if you look at any coins that have existed for this period of Bitcoin's bull market, this period of Bitcoin's bull market, they topped off at the exact same time. The only time that they didn't was when the bull market, it still ended. They still all ended their bull market at the same time. Bitcoin ended its bull market here again with the DXY. I hope that's all making sense. I hope I don't sound like a madman. If I do, I don't care, because it's what I'm saying. It's truth. It's literally all fact. It's like, this is my opinion as to when it's going to happen, but I am basing my opinions off of fact. Like it's very much everything, like you can't dispute it, right? The idea that it goes to 20K, 23K, that's an opinion, but I'm basing it off of previous performances. Even talking about the last cycle, whenever it was weak, I'm losing the point that I was trying to get to. Right, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. That's 6 months. Imagine if the cycle continued to grow. We could have had new all-time highs last cycle. That's just my opinion. But again, alluding to all these different things, I think from a high point to a low point here, this is the area that we're looking for, okay? Personally, 23.2K, and it could be higher. Based off the breakout move, it could be higher. 13K. This little box right here is when I think Bitcoin Cash itself will top off, as early as April 2025, being pessimistic and early, assuming early. Realistically, I think assuming early, because I don't think January, to me that doesn't make sense. But as early as April, okay, I'll give it to you. I think it could happen. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think it could happen. It would make more sense to be the middle or end of the year based off of previous cycle performances in Bitcoin's note and altcoins that have existed with these previous cycle peaks. Obviously, there are no altcoins back here. But anyways, I would think that it would be closer to this bar than it would be this bar, but this is our box. This is our golden glory box on the backboard here that we're aiming for to make a swoosh in the net, whatever. I'm going to stop making horrible analogies. Now we're going to compare the Grayscale Trust. If you stuck around all that time, all that madness, you get to hear the Grayscale Trust. Okay, I'm going to try to not talk so fast. I feel like I talk very fast. I get ahead of myself sometimes. The Grayscale Trust last cycle did top off before Bitcoin Cash did. It topped off 20 weeks before Bitcoin Cash did. Okay, and this was the first time that we ever had the Grayscale Trust out. So I don't know if this, just like this cycle was obviously a outlier, especially an outlier compared to any other cycle. This cycle is even an outlier compared to the last two cycles, but especially so with this cycle. I think it's safe to assume that this too could be an outlier. It ended 20 weeks, which I think on a monthly time frame is 5 months. It ended, a little bit less than 5 months, right? No, about 5. Yeah, because 5 times 4 is 20. Each month is a little bit longer than 4 weeks technically, right? Just over that. So a little bit, less than 5 months, maybe. I don't know. 20 weeks. Let's just keep it at that. 20 weeks. I think I have this theory that we're not going to top off as early this time. Okay, but let's say it is as early. Let's say it's even earlier. 20 weeks. We've already assumed through painful and just all the nonsense that I went over. That's not nonsense, but it's just my genuine opinion. Sometime in April, let's just put it right in the middle of April there, to potentially at the very end of the year. It could be sometime in December. Let's go to the actual end of December, because I do think we could end as early as January of 2026 even. This is a wider time frame because we're on a monthly here. Here we're on a weekly, so of course it's going to be wider. If this is as early as Bitcoin Cash itself could top off, then I think it's safe to assume that at a minimum, at the earliest, at the fair earliest, and this would be based solely off of what we saw last cycle, that would put us at the end of this year, November, okay? November. Let's throw a little bit more time there, so add an extra 4 weeks. It could be the very end of October, right around Halloween time, that these Grayscale Trusts top off, okay? But again, this would be under the assumption that would only be true if Bitcoin Cash itself then topped off in April. And contrary to my own beliefs, we saw the exact same amount of time, actually a larger gap between the highs of the trust and the underlying asset. Truthfully, I think it's going to be less time. I don't think it'll be 20 weeks. I think it might be half that amount of time. It might be even closer than that. I actually think it'll be a lot closer. Maybe it's not 10, maybe it's 15. But I'm going to cut it right in half. I'm going to say 10 weeks instead of 20 weeks. So that would give us, in my opinion, a more realistic early assessment. This would be the most pessimistic and fair, I would say, most pessimistic and fair, even outside of my own expectations, possibility for this Bitcoin Cash Grayscale Trust to top off would be October of this year. I don't think that's going to happen, personally. I give that like a less than, I'd say less than 15% chance of happening. Decent chance, less than 15% chance would be my assumption, for whatever that's worth. This, I would say, is also not that likely, but I would say maybe a little bit more, maybe like a 20%, 30% chance of happening. Okay, something like that. February of 2025. And that would be, Q1. That could happen. I definitely think that could happen. I wouldn't bet against that would happen. I would take money. I would bet anybody that these Grayscale Trusts don't end there. But as early as February could be the case. And this is, again, off of the earliest assumption. If we go to October of 2025, which is when I personally do expect that the cycle will end, right? Let's just put it in the middle of October again. We can do 24 weeks again. Well, that would put us at the end of April. Okay, that put us at the end of April this time around. for the Bitcoin Cash Grayscale Trust to top off, but that would be, again, a larger gap from the high of the underlying asset, assumedly in October, versus the gap that we had last time. If we're being more, and that is not what I expect, but we're taking all options. Let's go half, which I think is more appropriate personally. I think that is somewhere around there. It might not be exactly half, but I do think it'll be a lesser amount of time. Because you also had a lot of seed round investors. Like it's different this cycle. You have people who've been holding on to it who are speculating on it. They're not private placement investors, right? You had a lot of private placement sellers going on with this, I would assume. Probably people who bought the low here too and saw a lot of gains in a short amount of time, alongside being toward the end of the cycle itself. The DXY was increasing, Who knows why this happened so early compared to the underlying asset, but I have those are kind of my theories. But maybe instead of that, it's 10 bars, 10 weeks before when I would expect Bitcoin Cash to top off. That could be as late as August. The Bitcoin Cash Grayscale Trust could top off in August of next year if Bitcoin Cash tops off in October. It could. And that to me, somewhere I would say between August and April, the end of April and the beginning of August, I think this window, and I'm going to actually put these, I'm going to change the color here and make them white. I think these, because they stand out. Not because I like all colors, okay? But the white on the black, it stands out. If this was a white screen, they would be black bars, but it's not. The white screen it's too blinding. We don't like the white screen. We like the black screen. Again, I'm not a color person. I don't care, right? I'm gonna stop. Okay, we're gonna continue. If we went to the end of the year, December 2025, which I don't think is when Bitcoin Cash, again, just like how I'm not assuming this would be, when BCHG tops out, I wouldn't assume that this is when the underlying asset tops out, but it could. Let's just take all options into consideration. If we go to 24 weeks, that would again actually be right in that range there. Okay, getting more reads in this range so far than we have outside of the range, right, on all fronts. And then if we saw half that time, that'd put us in October. And that would actually be right around the time that I think the underlying asset is going to top off. But if it tops off later, perhaps it's October. If you have all that time to grow, look at your trajectory. Look at how parabolic and beautiful you look. Like, how far could you grow in that amount of time? And let's move this line over, right? Because that was for the underlying asset. The yellow lines are the outliers of what I would expect for BCHG. The white lines are my personal expected time window, both at the latest of my personal expectation, both at the earliest. I don't expect either of these lines to hit. What I would more expect is that it's somewhere in between, somewhere between April, somewhere between August, and truthfully, I would actually think you'd probably be closer to the middle of the year. I don't know if you're closer to either line. I don't know, but time will tell. We'll see. And maybe I'm wrong on assuming that it's 10 weeks from the high. Maybe it is more time. Maybe it's less time. I don't know. But we'll see as we go. And there will be signs. I would assume there will be signs. I don't know if we'll see it like this. Maybe it'll be a blow off top. I don't know. But I do think that if you miss the first high, if you're patient, you will get another attempt, right? And it can be scary. This first high will be scary. You might not get another attempt like this. That's only 5% away from your actual high. But it's going to be scary in the sense that over a 3-week period, you're going to drop 66%. But if you're patient and you trust the process that there will be a lower high, you might just catch that 114% pump, and it's still from the low. It's still going to be 28% from the high. It might not be perfect, but you'd have another chance to still sell at relatively high areas. Okay, if that's any closure for missing the top to sell. But if you miss the top, be ready for that next. There's normally, not always, but normally there are second chances, but there's not normally third or fourth chances. This was a gift, and it probably happened obviously because of the cycle high there. And you might even expect to see something like this. I think this, maybe not this exact kind of consolidation, but a pump with the underlying asset as it finds its high. I would assume the Grayscale Trust probably pumps with it. Yes, it might have already found its high by then, but it'll probably move up. So that actually might be a good second chance right there, is whenever we see the underlying asset top off. That, keep that in mind going forward as well. Man, I don't know how long this is going to be, because I'm going to have to talk about LTCN too. That was a weird laugh. Let's see here. High to low. High to low. We got the time. Let's get the price, right? And I've done a pretty in-depth analysis on the price. I've got Bitcoin. This orange line here, this is Bitcoin, by the way. Or no, I'm sorry. Bitcoin Cash is right here. This is the BCHG Trust. That's right. Okay, I think I've actually already said that, man. I'm sorry, guys. I'm all over the place. I would expect, and maybe I could just take that off now, right? I would expect, because that was only useful to measure from the high to, all right, that we would at least see, I genuinely do think at least $234. With the amount of time that we likely have left, at a pessimistic outlook, okay, cool. That could make sense. That really could make sense. If we top off in October, sure. But in a more realistic outlook, in my opinion, I would think that we not only hit 234, but we exceed 234. I don't normally use this tool, but I'm not the best at drawing curves. Let's see. Would it be best to like, no, probably not. And this is why I don't use it. Oh, okay, see, there it is. All right, hold on. Hold up now. Try to wine and dine it a little bit, maybe. Again, I'm not the best with this, but I just want something that like looks like it fits appropriately. I feel like that's pretty close. That might even be pessimistic, actually, right? But hey, that actually does hit that 234. That's like a straight line. Again, I'm not the best with curves, man. I don't know. That's might not be right. Let's see if maybe I can do this. Let's see. No, why did it go away? And maybe that just, yeah, see, it just looks so weird. I don't know. Maybe, is there an arc? I don't know if an arc, I don't know. Would I draw it? That, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know how to get it to draw. Maybe I should just do it with my naked eye, or learn how to use curves or arcs or ellipses or whatever would help here. But what I'm trying to show, maybe I could just use a straight line, is that from this low here to these lows here. No, because that doesn't, I don't think that's going to happen either. And you are already, I think that you are breaking away from this here. I'm struggling right here, guys, but I do think all this struggle to say, I do think that you'll probably be in this zone here between 234 and likely above it to potentially $1,400. I got caught up in that, but that's my personal expectation. Again, as early, if we saw the Bitcoin Cash Grayscale Trust top off in October of this year, perhaps you do only hit 234. That doesn't sound right to me, but perhaps you do. That would imply that the underlying asset tops off earlier too. So that's kind of a nice warning sign. If it is in the box that I'm expecting, then I would personally more expect 490 or higher. And I did do an in-depth video. I forget what the video was called, but I did it like a week or two ago, or maybe it was 3 weeks ago. Let's see if I can find it. Not Grayscale Trust ready to go. It was, and maybe it was Grayscale Trust ready to go. I forget. Maybe I can leave a link to that video in this description. I don't think it was this one. Where are we at here? Was it after? I thought it was after this scan, but maybe it was before. Let's see. Taking a little pause. Maybe it was after. Huh. I think it was earlier than this. I can't remember when. That's okay. Maybe it was, no, because that's only 5 minutes. I don't know, man. I don't remember what video it is. If anybody finds it, feel free to leave like a link in the description for people, because I don't know where it is. But it's a good video comparing the trust to their underlying assets to get not the time frame but the high frame, the prices in the highs. Maybe it's this video. Maybe it is the Grayscale Trust video, Ready to Explode. Maybe it is that one. I'll watch it. If it is this one, I'll leave a link in the description to that video. But I'm going to try to find it. That would explain why, beyond just what I'm saying in this video, before I got all distracted, why I think that this 490 area, a little bit above that even, makes sense for BCHG by the end of the cycle. So getting rid of all this time frame, potentially it is beyond that. Potentially it is higher. It's totally possible. But getting rid of the outlier expectations, this is the box that we have drawn. And I think given the current trajectory, it does look appropriate, in my opinion. It does look pretty appropriate. I think that we will see sustained growth and stronger growth at the end of the cycle. That would lead us somewhere in this area. And my personal expectation, I already gave you what outside my expectations would be for the earliest, right? My personal expectation at the earliest would be sometime in April to sometime in August of next year. Within that, likely not either of those months, but within the range of those months. And then not likely 231, not likely 1,442, but somewhere in between would be the price of BCHG in that time. Now, hopefully LTCN goes faster. Hopefully now, because I don't have the Bitcoin part, but man, I'm scared. I am scared for how long this is going to take, man. Here I was thinking I would get to bed on time. Let's see, where it's crypto. There we go. Yeah, for the all-time history. Because we want that. We want that there. And I think compare it as well, LTC, USD. Oh, there we go. USD, where are you? Crypto, new price scale. There we go. I'm going to log it, put it in log. And just so you guys know, you can have it in log, you can have it in regular, whatever. If it works for you, it works for you, man. That's all I got to say on that note. But let's see. Right? It's like if you use the RSI, but somebody doesn't use the RSI, that doesn't demean the value of the RSI or promote the value of whatever the other person's indicator is. It's just people have a difference, right? And if people don't understand the log, it's probably because they don't use it. But that doesn't mean that it's not something that is not viable or not possible, right? I've used the log my entire time trading, over 7 years now, and it's very reliable. We literally, with the beginning of the video, you can see how very well Bitcoin respected the 2272 and the 1618 extensions on the fib scale based on the log scale. You can't tell me, you can't tell me that it doesn't respect the log. Look at where it topped off. Look at where it found its low, right at the 1618. Look at that, right there. Look at that. It bounced off its 1272. It even hit its 3786 all the way up here. Look at that. You can't tell me that it don't respect these areas, right? High to low. If you don't like the log, okay, that's okay. You don't have to use it. But 1618 to the 886, this is literally a classic maneuver to move up to your 1618. Find support of your 886. I'm not making this up. Man, if anybody's been watching the channel for the last year, you know this exact maneuver is something that I talk about whenever I'm talking about bullish continuation, right? It's literally exactly like that. And it's all on the log scale. You can't tell me it doesn't work when we have evidence of it, right? You saying it doesn't work and not showing evidence or having any evidence, which you can't have because it's invalidated right there, doesn't mean that I'm any less right or that you're any more right. You're not any less right for using the linear scale. It's okay to use the linear scale and not use the log scale. But don't for a second pretend like the log scale gives you inaccurate predictions whenever Mac Daddy Bitcoin, with the largest freaking market cap in crypto, sees its extensions every cycle. The minimum extension it saw was its 1618, and I'm not even calling for these things to hit their 1618s. You know what I mean? Like, I am being conservative. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm looking at the data for what it is. We're in a consolidation phase with Litecoin. Same thing as Bitcoin Cash. It hasn't moved down. It just hasn't moved up. It's been consolidating. When this pattern breaks, you're likely from the top to the bottom of the pattern, you're probably going to see the expected zone. That's not crazy. You're going to break out of a pattern you've been in for multiple cycles. You're not just going to move up like this, boop, and then move down. No, you're crazy. I'm not crazy. You're crazy. I'm not crazy. You're crazy. What show is that off of? I feel like that's like Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec. I don't know, but enough of the. I'm making this video longer than it needs to be on my own. Hit that like button and subscribe if you like it, and if you hate it, still hit that like button. I can understand if you don't subscribe. Consolidation pattern. I think Litecoin's going to break out of this consolidation pattern this cycle. I do. I expect that personally. The area that I would say that I would expect Litecoin to go to at a minimum would be about $800. But I actually don't even expect that at a minimum. I think it's going to be above 1,000. I would think at least 1,200, if not likely 2,000 or higher, genuinely 2,000 or higher. And people laugh at me for that, but you want to take this low of the pattern to the high of the pattern here. And I'm not even going to the actual high over here, but this is like the beginning of the pattern, so I feel like that's fair, right? That would actually call for a measure move that takes you all the way up to $6,000, right? If you break this pattern. Again, measure moves are ideas. They're ideas. They are not requirements. If you don't believe me that this is how it goes, that this is how you measure it, go on to thepatternSite.com. This is a website made by a man named Thomas Bulkowski. He's probably been trading longer than anybody watching this video has even been involved in markets. Decades, like 50 years, right? Or more. I don't even know. Like at least 40 years. But probably going on 50 years. He updates this thing all the time. Go ahead and look up chart patterns. Go to ascending triangles. Go to whatever descending triangles. Go to the measure moves. He'll show you. Go to all of them. You can learn all of it yourself, and you'll see that. And I actually reference this a lot, even today. It's a free thing. I don't pay for it. It's not exclusive to me. ThepatternSite.com. You can all use it. You want to learn technical analysis for yourself? It's a bumpy road for a lot of people. Most of the time it is, but chart patterns, you can learn candlestick patterns. You can learn what a busted pattern looks like, what Elliott wave, where are you? I know there's, oh, right here, Elliott wave right there. All kinds of things. He's got quizzes for you to take for free. You know, he ranks patterns by like what's the best performing, what's the worst performing. If you're doubting that this is the measure move, which you shouldn't because it is, it literally for 100% is. That's the way that this expert, there's not many experts in crypto. Like how could anybody be an expert in crypto whenever it's been around for like less than 20 years in itself? I don't know. You can put all the time you want, but this is still a new asset class. But this guy is an expert trader. Absolutely he is. And I trust that he knows what he's talking about. So you don't want to take my word for it. Take his word for it, but not financial advice. But the measure move doesn't have to be met, and he'll even give you a statistic of the likelihood of that measure move being met or exceeded or fallen short. He'll give you all those statistics if you look it up. But that's the measure move of this pattern. But you could, going back to the main story, I think that at a minimum, you're going to see 1,200. At a maximum, Litecoin could see 6,300. When is that going to happen? Well, likely, again, it topped off because this actually existed before Bitcoin Cash did. It topped off. Its first high was in November of 2013. November of 2013 was Bitcoin's high. Its next high was in 2017, December. Litecoin's high right here, the start of the pattern, 2017 December. This high happened in May, which just so happened to be a month after Bitcoin found its high, right? And actually that, again, lining up with what I said about the 2017 cycle, generally you see Bitcoin sell off and then altcoins run a little bit with that, and then they sell off shortly after, right? The altcoins pump a little bit after Bitcoin tops off. That's kind of the realm of normality with what happens. What happened last cycle is not the realm of normality. If anybody's expecting this, they're going to miss out. They're going to miss out. I'm just saying right now. That's my thought. That's my theory. This is not normal. And I went over why. Watch the beginning of the video with the DXY stuff when I lost my shenanigans on the geopolitical stuff. This is not normal, and there are reasons for it. We are in better geopolitical and economic times than we have been in a long time, right? We're coming out of a recessionary phase, right? We're potentially going to have the most crypto-friendly president of the United States ever with a very crypto friendly and proactive vice president as well, who's even more so than he is. It's gonna be good. It's likely gonna not double top. It didn't double top because it was a strong market. No, it double top because it was a weak market. That's why. And yet still, it didn't. Litecoin didn't top off at Bitcoin's all-time high, but it did top off at the end of the bull cycle like Bitcoin did. So if we're not going to get a double top, if Bitcoin doesn't do this, it just does this to end the cycle, then likely, as Litecoin did the previous two cycles, it will top off at the same time Bitcoin did. And I've already gone over my expectations for when that will be. At the earliest for Bitcoin, like the genuine expectation of the earliest would be April. The latest that I would give it would be December, with a more probable likelihood being in October. Oh, that's a year away actually. With the likely, a more likelihood being in between these areas. I think probably October or thereabouts. Watch it be November because that seems to be a month, or December itself. Again, Bitcoin tops off at the end of the year, November. December, Litecoin does too. Last cycle it topped off early, but again, there's reasons for that. It's a lot of time left in the cycle. You don't believe me? You think that Litecoin can't see these prices in that amount of time? Well, last cycle, again, was a dud. It was an absolute dud. I don't think measuring the first cycle is fair because the first cycle for everything is crazy, and then it gets more tame. Although, I mean, that's still a crazy pump, but it didn't pump as fast. But 2,800% in 2 months. Boom. 2 months time, it's done it before. I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but absolutely I think 1,200 could be achieved based off that alone, which to me, that's a bit of a reach. Let's be fair, that's a bit of a reach. I'm not going to compare it to last cycle because last cycle was a flop. It was a dud, but let's actually do that. Let's compare it to last cycle. From when we started taking off, from a low point here to the high point, that was 7 months, and that was a total of 856%. If we were to see somewhere in the middle, let's not even go to October, let's go to September, let's go a little bit earlier than that, August, right, of 2025. Maybe that's when Litecoin tops off. And let's say we were at the same, even lower prices than we are now, we're at this line. That would make it only go up to $628. I don't know. That's not really that much. That'd be, again, kind of comparing it to last cycle's movements, which I think we can all agree was a dud of a cycle. That was very appropriate, I think, on the price. So yeah, that goes up to the high. I think that it will be stronger than this. Again, alluding to the idea that actually we will achieve prices in the extended zone at least $800, but I think that that's not going to happen. What I really think the only cycle that we could compare it to as far as growth goes might actually be the 2017 cycle. And I don't think that it'll look exactly like this, but from a low point here to the high point, the amount of time that we saw when things were actually good, when geopolitical, economical things in the world were not a disaster, whenever we had inflation rates more or less under control, although I think they lie about them. Even when they are under control, I think they're out of control probably. When we had not like the threat of World War III, even though I don't think we did have that. I think that was just a story for the media to spin off. When we didn't have COVID, when we didn't have a recession, when we didn't have the DXY increasing or going through an expansion phase, whatever you want to call it in that time, this is the kind of growth we saw, right? Not just in Litecoin, but across the board. We had a very, very poor cycle last cycle. So comparing it to that, if we were still to be at the current prices that we are now in November or December of this year, and then we moved up in the same amount of time that we moved here, the end of the cycle is the strongest point, then that would give us a move beyond what I'm calling for, even $6,000 in this window that I'm looking for, right? And it's probably not going to look exactly like this. I'm not comparing these to say it's going to be one of these three or nothing. It's probably not going to be the exact way that either of these three happen. I'm comparing it to show that regardless if it's this pessimistic one, this crazy one, or the one that it might be the most like, they all top off somewhere in this window. It doesn't need a whole cycle to run. It doesn't. In fact, it spends its whole cycle moving sideways, and then at the end of it, that's when it runs, which is how most of them do it, right? Or a good bit of them do it. I just don't think it's going to be as weak as this cycle. I don't think it's going to be as crazy in a 2-month period as this. I would expect something like this, but probably more tame than this, to be fair, not as crazy. And again, more tame, if this is what that would be above this. More tame could be, hey, all the way down here. And maybe it takes longer. maybe it takes more time, whatever. But I don't think that $2,000 is crazy. I don't think $6,000 is crazy. I think you're crazy if you think Litecoin isn't going to see new all-time highs. That's my personal expectation. But let's beyond trying to validate my beliefs, because you either are going to go with it or you're not going to go with it, and that's just, people are stuck in their thoughts. I haven't thought this. I haven't thought that this price was possible for Litecoin up until recently, up until I gave it like a genuine fair look. I thought that this was going to be the high, personally, somewhere in here. But this, again, let's be pessimistic. Let's not just be like where I'm expecting it. Let's go below where I'm expecting it. Litecoin has a bit of a bigger zone, doesn't it? Somewhere between, I'll get rid of these white lines, somewhere between $1,200 to $6,300 within the time of April 2025 to December of 2025. It's a very big range. It's a lot bigger of a range. And I think the reason why this is unknown is because we still don't know how high, when it breaks out, where this is going to go. We really don't know. It's hard to say. But based on the fibs, this is the range that we have. And actually, I want to measure. This is something that I didn't do for Bitcoin Cash. I wish I did, but I'm not going to go back and do this. But that would be a minimum of a 1,600% growth to potentially an 8,600% growth. Okay, and maybe I'll actually leave both of those on there. Yeah, something like that. I feel like that's appropriate. I made this one wide so you could see the numbers, because if I put it back here, it'd be overlapped, and I just don't want that. So LTCN, I'm assuming that, like last cycle, again, we do top off before the actual underlying asset tops off. I would assume so. And this one was 23 bars, okay. But I don't think it'll be as far away as this was. I think it'll be closer, actually, right? Just like Bitcoin Cash, just like BCHG. So high point here to low point here, hit your 161869. I do think that Litecoin itself will top off in the same time frame that Bitcoin itself tops off, as it normally does, actually, which would be potentially, and I don't think this is going to happen, but potentially end of December to potentially the middle of April, let's just say, right? Middle of April. I don't think that it'll be earlier than that for Litecoin. I don't even think it'll be here. I don't think it'll be here. It'll probably be somewhere in between, with a heavier emphasis on that June to October timeframe, personally. But at the earliest here, if we go to 23 weeks, let's do the same thing we did for Bitcoin Cash, add on 4 weeks, add on like a month. So 27 weeks here would then imply that Litecoin LTCN tops off in October of this year. Again, October, right? And we'll make that yellow. If it's half the time, 23 weeks, let's just say 12 weeks, we'll give it a little bit more than half the time, right? 12 weeks, then that could be as early as January of 2025. And that's at the absolute earliest. When I think it's going to be is probably October, right? I think October is when that the end of the cycle is going to be. So basing it off of that metric alone, 12 bars would be here, right? And that's actually my personal expectation, so I'm going to make that the white bar. I'm going to delete this because we don't need it anymore. And then 27 bars, adding an extra month earlier, which I don't think is going to happen, but that would be March of 2025. And again, I am going to throw this out. I don't think this is the earliest. This is the earliest at the most pessimistic I could be, would be October of this year again. But I am going to move that. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think. And if it were to be October, then the highest that I would think LTCN would see might be around $200 to $240. Let's say $150 to $240. That would be the height that LTCN sees. But again, if that happens, that would just mean that LTC tops off earlier. And if LTC is topping off earlier, the end of the cycle might top off earlier too. Litecoin, by the way, for anybody thinking in their head, Litecoin doesn't matter for the cycle's end. It has been the coin the last 2 cycles. Not the only coin. Bitcoin Cash has too, but and specifically, actually, both of them have started moving up before like the majority of the market has, right? Like Litecoin led the market a little bit last cycle, and it did lead the market a little bit this cycle too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it found its low in May of 2022, right? Bitcoin didn't find its low until November of 2022, okay? Just for reference's sake. So I think if Litecoin tops earlier, and that's because its halving period is earlier than Bitcoin's as well. That's kind of my theories. But I do think it'll top off with Bitcoin. But I don't think this is going to happen. But if it does, that's the most pessimistic that I can be. So that's your range. But I am going to move this over here. I still think that January is ridiculous, but let's be fair. We'll leave it there. And then we'll also say potentially on a more realistic level, April. I think April could be the earliest that we see it. I'm actually going to move this white bar there, April. April to me makes sense. And then if we saw half that time, again, that could be as late as July. Okay. Now, if we go at the absolute latest, which I don't think is when the cycle will end, would be in December of 2025. Perhaps LTCN tops off 13 weeks before, which could be, September to potentially June again, right? A lot lining up in that middle to end of the year kind of time frame. So I'm going to move this white line there too. I'm going to move this to September, right? Because that's what 13 bars or 12 bars was. Right, it should have been 12 bars, not 13 bars, sorry. So this is the window, right? No. I feel like that would still be late, so I am going to make this one yellow. I'm going to make that one yellow. And I think more likely from October, so June, right? June was the one that would be white, yeah. Because October, let's just say the end of October, right? Maybe around Bitcoin's birthday, so even a little bit later than that, but let's go to 12 bars. That'd be July, actually, so let's go July. And then we'll put this up here for LTCN. The minimum target of which, and again, I do actually think that it is that, where was it? Did I go back? I didn't think I did. I guess I did go back. Grayscale Trust ready to go. That might be it. No. Was that the one? Grayscale, maybe it was earlier. Let's see. Ready to explode, this one. I think in this one, I do a good analysis of where I think the price could be for LTCN. But assuming that Litecoin itself could be at a 1,500% growth to a 8,600% growth by the end of its cycle, right? Let's say, I don't know. I'm not going to do that actually right now. That I do stuff like this more so in this video if you want to see it, the Ready to Explode video. I will leave a link in the description. But let's just say, to keep it short and easy, that I do think LTCN could be at around, I think the lowest I had in that video was somewhere around $800. And the highest I had was still below $1,200, but with new light on Litecoin itself. No pun intended, new light on Litecoin there. I do think that these targets from $2,000 to $4,000 are on the table. So I am going to keep it at the 1414. That's the highest that I would give it, somewhere in that target area. I don't think 13,000 is possible, and I really do think 4,000 is even a bit out of reach. But it is the maximum expectation that I would have. More likely than not, you'd probably have something in between this $2,000. I'll just leave that there too. We'll have a bit of a hash in this, but it's not so much a box, but this area right here would be what I would expect for LTCN. The most likely, the most probable, based off of what I would assume to hold true for LTCN based on its price charts here and its growths, and comparing Litecoin and Bitcoin and all the things, geopolitical circumstances, economic circumstances, all that stuff. Of course, anything can happen at any point. I'm not a prophet. This is not a prophecy. I can be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But essentially, I would assume at the earliest, and if it's earlier, we probably don't see these top two lines. At the earliest, January 2025 could be when LTCN tops off. And that could then mean that you top off somewhere between, I think, 150 to 240, right? Somewhere in that range. Maybe at the best, you top off at around 800, okay, in that time, maybe. Oh, no, that was if it was on October. So you would be above 240 at that rate. So like $800, somewhere around there, $800, $900 might be where you are if it tops off in January. And in which case the cycle itself might end sooner too, because Litecoin is a front runner of the markets. But more likely, I think you're going to end somewhere in April to July for LTCN. And at a minimum, I would stand by it about like the upper, or mid 800s to potentially as high as the low 4,000s, somewhere in that range. So April to July is what I would give. The earliest window that I would say really would be April to January. The latest window that I would say would be July to December, July to October. But more likely than not, it won't be any of those. It'll be somewhere in the midst of the zone. It won't be the absolute high over here. It won't be the absolute low. It won't be the absolute latest. It won't be the absolute earliest. It'll be somewhere in between, somewhere right in between. And I guess if we had a midpoint, more or less, that'd be like $1,700 in the middle of June. Something like that, $1,700 to $2,000. And I really do, if you're curious to see a more in-depth analysis specifically pertaining to the price, in which I do some math and compare things differently with this. I think Grayscale Trust Ready to Explode is a good one for that. And the Litecoin part is at the end if you want to skip to that, or the LTCN is at the end of that. So I don't know, guys. I hope this video made sense. I feel like I trailed off on a few places and I lost some momentum at the end there. Let me know how I did in the comments. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to see more content. You guys, I really do appreciate you for being here. Again, this one was at the request of Mr. Martin himself. It's a good video. This isn't the first time. It probably won't be the last time that I do a video like this, but I do enjoy doing stuff like this, especially as we get closer to the end of the cycle. If we look at this for what it is, right, I feel like, and I'm going to take away these yellow lines now, and I'm going to make it look a little bit prettier, all right? Make it look cleaner. We'll just leave the box there. Let's leave a box. Let's leave a box. Where is the box? There it is. Come on. Something like that. Oh, got that yellow line there too. I feel like that does line up with the trajectory that it's going to. Like I could draw a line. I will draw a line, right? It's probably not going to be the best line, but it's definitely not going to be the best line. But I feel like it looks right to me, and maybe I'm making it look right, but I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like it fits these parameters, right? Maybe it doesn't. Oh, wait, that wasn't the actual high there. I don't know. And that's the lower end of that box. But I do think that this isn't a parabolic formation, so this line isn't even really appropriate. It'd probably be more something like that. And then these highs, of course, would get higher too. So, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like with the naked eye, it looks like a very doable target given the time frame that we have. But maybe I'm being too optimistic. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe something happens with the Grayscale Trust or with the crypto markets as a whole. I can't help but think that this is going to be a very bullish cycle and that it will be more bullish than last cycle. And I think comparing the results of last cycle's movements, which were very held back, will only hold you back for the potential gains that you could see for the coming cycle. That's my personal opinion. I can be wrong. But I didn't just say that. I gave you my reasons for that. If those reasons make sense to you, cool. You might see things the same way as me. If you understand my reasons, but you still don't see things the same way as me, that's cool too. Maybe you have your own reasons why you think that the cycle will end earlier, or maybe it ends later, or like there are likely a bunch of things that I've missed that I haven't gone over. But I feel like the things that I did go over are very concrete and factual, right? The only thing that's not factual is when and where the price could be. That's all assumptions. And then also what's not factual is that the economic conditions will get better. It looks like they're going to get better. It seems like they're going to get better. That's the world stage that's laid out before us. It seems like this next 2 to 4 year period is going to be good. For crypto, the next year to 2 year period is going to be good, but it's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed. It's just my opinion. But hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content, guys. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.